Excellent!
So a massive disclaimer to start this video. I'm going to be discussing AMD's new Ryzen 3000 series CPUs as well as their upcoming Radeon RX 5700 series GPUs, which are codenamed Navi, as well as the new information that AMD just shared today at their E3 event. The performance numbers that I'm showing you are all from AMD. There is no way to vet or verify them independently until July 7th when the review embargo lifts for the CPUs and X570 motherboards, so take them with a few grains of salt. That said, if what AMD has presented is in the ballpark of the actual performance of Ryzen 3000, we are looking at a product launch that will drastically change the landscape when it comes to desktop PC hardware. Intel should be very concerned. So I have a lot to cover in this video, but here's the headline news. AMD has confirmed another new Ryzen 3000 series CPU, the much anticipated 16-core, 32-thread chip dubbed the Ryzen 9 3950X. It has a 4.7 GHz boost clock and it will be available in September. We also just found out the price, although I don't know it right now, but you guys do. It's that much money. On the GPU side, we also have confirmation of, and I have now actually seen, the new Radeon RX 5700 GPUs, the RX 5700 and the RX 5700 XT. These are Navi-based cards, which will cost that much money, and AMD has shown them as competition for NVIDIA's RTX 2060 and 2070 cards. So the TLDR version of this video would be, the Ryzen 3000 series CPUs look like they will be providing some serious competition to Intel's entire mainstream product lineup, including the 9900K, and are even competitive with some of Intel's high core count X299 based CPUs. And then the Navi-based RX 5700 and RX 5700 XT will launch in July and are also looking pretty good, but will probably be more like competitive options to some of NVIDIA's existing mid-range cards rather than complete game changers on the GPU side. So let's get into some more details on those Zen 2-based 7nm Ryzen 3000 CPUs. If you're not excited about Zen 2, by the way, AMD also showed a roadmap for Zen 3, which will be based on a refined 7nm process, 7nm plus, and even Zen 4, which is just in design as for right now. But AMD does have two teams that work on CPU designs, and they always leapfrog each other. So they always have products in development alongside their current existing lineup of CPUs, which I think is a good way of doing things. As for the Ryzen 9 3950X, it does exist and it will be available, but not until September 2019. 16 cores and 32 threads, a 3.5 GHz base clock and a 4.7 GHz boost, 72 megabytes of total cache, and just a 105 watt TDP. Not a whole lot more to say about it right now. I am a bit surprised and I will say delighted that this part has a higher boost clock than the 8 or 12 core Ryzens, which might indicate that they're doing some heavy binning for these chiplets in the 3950X, kind of similar to what they did with the Threadripper dies with first and second gen Ryzen, but also still just a 105 watt TDP. That is very efficient if true, and I think I have an efficiency boner. So what I want to do here is show you some of AMD's charts, and again, these are AMD's charts, grains of salt, etc., etc. But first I wanted to talk about some of the things that AMD has done to make their CPUs faster and specifically better for gaming. AMD already has a price to performance lead in general compute performance simply because they're selling higher core count and higher thread count CPUs than Intel for the same price or less, but single core performance is what has held the first and second generation Ryzen CPUs back when it comes to gaming. AMD says that compared to the 2700X, third gen Ryzen parts have from 9 to 21% better single thread performance, and that is not including the slightly higher clocked 16-core 3950X. These charts only go up to the 3900X. Part of this uplift actually comes from Windows 10's May 2019 update, as Microsoft has recognized AMD's successes in recent years and made some Ryzen-specific operating system upgrades. Topology awareness means that Windows 10 will focus on using a single CCX unit in the CPU when possible, which eliminates the inter-CCX latency for workloads that only need a few cores, which is often the case when gaming. Another update has reduced the clock ramping time when it goes from a base clock to a boost clock state from 30 milliseconds down to 1 to 2, which is about a 20 times improvement. AMD is also calling their CPU's cache the game cache, which is maybe a little silly, but they wanted to point out that doubling the L3 cache size on these new CPUs has helped reduce latency by about 33 nanoseconds. These seemingly small changes add up though, and AMD says that about 60% of the performance uplift for Ryzen 3000 versus 2000 series comes from these IPC enhancements, while about 40% comes from that process shrink going down to 7 nanometers. So here's the gaming comparison according to AMD, the 9900K versus the 3900X, both chips costing $500, and in these titles at least, at 1080p, AMD shows about equivalent performance. And for them that is a win, because as previously stated, Intel's chips get smacked around by AMD's when it comes to content creation and other CPU-intensive workloads workloads due to core and thread count, as you can see in this chart. 12 cores are going to beat 8 cores when the per core performance is about equal. That just makes sense. Here's a similar chart showing the $400 3800X versus the about $400 9700K. Sure, GTA 5 and Overwatch might be a bit behind when it comes to AMD versus Intel, but that's made up for by the PUBG and maybe again the significant disparity in content creation performance. Basically what they're saying is you can buy the Intel CPU and get just as good of gaming performance as we have, but if you want to do anything else with it, then we have a significant lead. And I think that's pretty safe to say even without independently testing these chips. We see more of the same when comparing the $250 3600X to the 9600K, and I can't help but think that if Intel didn't keep hyper-threading as a premium feature that's only on their highest-end CPUs, the 6-core 9600K might have done a little bit better here. But beyond that, AMD is also claiming the efficiency crown with a Cinebench R20 demo showing about 138 watts total power draw for their $330 8-core 16-thread 3700X versus about 158 watts for Intel's 9700K. Also, the 3700X finished this Cinebench R20 test much more quickly, although I was a little bit too far away to get the exact actual scores. So you might ask at this point, hey Paul, were there any other ways that AMD is making Intel's mainstream product lineup irrelevant with this launch? Well, yes there are. For one, there are those pesky security issues that Intel has been dealing with. Here is AMD's list of recent significant security flaws and how they affect Ryzen CPUs. By and large, they do not. Zen 2 does now have hardware mitigations for Spectre, for example. Oh, and AMD also said that they ran all of their Intel system tests that they shared today without updated software and firmware mitigations in place for these security flaws, which gives Intel a much better shot at best case scenario performance, because some of the security flaws disable their ability to use hyperthreading, for example, which significantly affects performance. Also, the AMD CPUs in these tests were tested without those Windows 10 updates that I mentioned earlier, so performance there is most likely going to improve once they move up to the May update from Windows 10. Rounding things out though, there is the X570 platform, which is also looking pretty nice, apart from the need for fans on some of the chipset heatsinks, but it does have cool features like 4 dedicated PCIe 4.0 lanes from the CPU specifically for NVMe storage. That's on top of the 16 available for PCI Express slots and 4 that go over to the chipset. There's also a ton of USB 3.2 Gen 2, including 4 ports directly from the CPU and 8 directly from the chipset, as well as an updated memory controller with native DDR4 3200 support right out of the gate. Speaking of memory, Ryzen has always liked fast memory, but has been finicky about compatibility with some kits on the market. For Ryzen 3000 series, AMD said that every kit that they have tried up to DDR4 4200 speed has worked simply by enabling XMP settings. We'll need some further testing on that, but that is promising when it comes to easy memory support and compatibility. What they're recommending for Ryzen 3000 series is DDR4 3600, by the way. Also, they hit DDR4 5100 on this platform on air. So was there anything bad about the info that was presented? Well, aside from my earlier warnings about this info being direct from AMD and likely massaged to some degree to show their products in a very good light, there was one particular demo that stood out. They used a FLIR thermal imaging camera on the 9700K and 3700X heatsinks after testing to show how the 9700K was hotter, and there's just multiple things wrong with that. For one, the heatsink is reflective and not good for this type of thermal imaging. Also, the heatsink might not reflect the temperature of the CPU itself, and most egregiously, they described the 9700K's heatsink as white hot. Never mind that they had set the thermal range to 27 degrees Celsius max in order to show the greatest visual difference and show just above 27°C as white when the actual temperature differential was only about 1.8 degrees. I think the only thing that was white hot was Gamers Nexus Steve's anger at yet another misuse of thermal imaging. So that's all, and I guess we're done with this. Oh wait, no. There's also the graphics cards. Navi, or that's what they used to be known. Now they're the 5700 series GPUs based on 7nm RDNA architecture, which previously was codenamed Navi. RDNA is a new architecture. It's the successor to GCN that has been the core of Radeon GPUs since about 2012. Vital stats for the new GPUs are as follows though. The Radeon RX 5700 XT has 40 compute units, 2,560 stream processors, 8 GB of GDDR6 at 14 gigabits per second, a 1,605 MHz base clock, 1,000 1755 MHz game clock and 1905 MHz boost clock. Base, game, and boost clocks are sort of a new listing from AMD when it comes to stats for graphics cards, and it's actually listings that I'm pretty okay with. The base is what the clock speed should be while running a Furmark or similar synthetic GPU power virus test. The game clock is the speed that you're more likely to see while you're actually just playing a game, and then the boost clock is opportunistic, or what they expected to hit under the more best case conditions. They said that the game clock is a bit conservative, so most people are going to be seeing actual clock speeds between the game clock and the boost clock numbers when you're actually using the graphics card to play a video game. The shroud and the cooler have a new design, which I was able to get some footage of, and I think it looks pretty decent as reference designs go. Yes, the Radeon logo does light up in red. No, it's not RGB. There's a vapor chamber to handle heat dissipation from the GPU and memory, and a 6+1 phase power delivery setup for the 5700 XT with one 6-pin and one 8-pin PCI Express graphics power connector. Connectors. Some might shy away from a blower style reference design such as this, as AMD doesn't necessarily have the best track record with them in the past, but they said that they did cap the noise output at 42 dB and that this design is the best for thermally isolating the GPU's heat output from the rest of the system, and that is true in a lot of use case scenarios, especially system integrators who like to use that style of card so they don't have to worry about the other parts that are in the build. This also means that we're probably going to be seeing third-party designs that can improve on this cooler's thermal performance. There is also the Radeon RX 5700 non-XT. It is cut down just a bit with 36 compute units and 2,304 stream processors, but still with 8 gigs of GDDR6 at 14 gigabits per second, a 1,465 MHz base clock, 1625 MHz game clock, and 1725 MHz boost clock. The shroud design is a bit simpler for the 5700, and the power delivery is slightly reduced to a 5+1 phase setup, but there's still one 6-pin and one 8-pin PEG connector. AMD says that both of these cards are made for 1440p gaming, and they showed some in-house performance comparisons with the 5700 XT versus the RTX 2070 and the 5700 versus the RTX 2060. Feel free to pause and analyze these performance charts. I will leave that to your discretion, so I can quickly mention a couple other things. For instance, Radeon Image Sharpening is AMD's answer to DLSS, and they say it works better with less of, or in their words, virtually no performance hit. It is a post-processing effect that does sharpening in low contrast areas but leaves high contrast areas alone, so you get more detail without making clean anti-alias process lines more blurry. Also, they showed an Asus monitor with display stream compression, which allows a 4K 144Hz HDR signal to be transmitted over a single DisplayPort cable with FreeSync 2 support. That's pretty cool. Lastly, we have Radeon Anti-Lag, which you might actually be interested in. Basically, it paces your CPU while you're gaming, especially in a GPU-limited scenario, in order to reduce your input lag, or the click-to-response time. Yes, it does work with both AMD and Intel CPUs, and basically it makes it so when you click your mouse or press a button, the action is reflected on screen sooner, and it'll cut your input response time by about a frame, or around 14 milliseconds. Esports fans and those with less powerful systems should be very happy with this feature, again assuming it works as intended. AMD did save some announcements for the very end of the show, such as the existence of the 3950X and finally the price, $749 US, which is about what we were expecting. Also, there is a special anniversary edition of the Radeon RX 5700 XT. It's still going to be $500, but only available from AMD.com, and spec-wise it looks to be the same as the regular 5700 XT, just overclocked with a GPU base clock of 1680, game clock of 1830, and boost clock of 1980 with 10.14 teraflops of compute performance. Along with that, they announced the prices for the 5700 XT and 5700, $449 and $379 respectively, as well as the actual in-store for sale date, which is also going to be July 7th. And the very last thing they showed was some LN2 overclocking, where they broke some world records, some very impressive numbers here for 16-core performance. That's pretty much all I have for you guys today. We have about a month until we can actually get some real-world, third-party tested performance numbers for the Radeon 3000 series, and then hopefully AMD will be revealing the actual launch date besides just July for the Navi-based GPUs, the Radeon RX 5700 series, soon as well. But guys, let me know in the comments section what you think about all of this new information from AMD. Do you think they're being honest and forthright with these benchmark numbers that they're sharing? Or do you think they're like tweaking stuff to make themselves look good, and when the product actually launches, we're going to test them and be like, hey, you guys were lying and Intel is still the best? I don't really know one way or the other, but I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. And of course, hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video before you leave, and don't forget to subscribe if you're not already for more tech videos coming at you real soon. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.